tuning in to the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey guys, welcome back. It's the Gracepoint After Show here at AFTERBUZZ TV. We are diving in to the suspect list to find out who it is. Suspect everyone who killed Danny Solano. I'm your host, Zach Wilson. Let's get into it. Right to my left, Kelly McInerney.
What up?
Hey, it's Anastacia Waller.
Hi, I'm Adrian Snow.
We're all together.
Yeah, this is the first time the whole panel has been together. It took us through more than 50% of the season, but we got it.
Well, 50, because it'll be 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so it's 50%, right?
No, this is episode 6. We're
yeah, but
60%
if you count
through.
6, and then 10 is another episode. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
There's 10 episodes.
Yeah,
We've
but
done
so-
6. This is
so
either
we're
way.
right-
Either way,
right at
the whole
50%,
pan.
yes.
This is not what I want to hear from our detectives. We're really bad at these numbers. But yeah, we got the whole detective squad together. We're gonna dive in. Let's see what we got. This episode was. Well, first let's talk about the episode. This was, I think, my favorite episode this season.
It was my favorite in Broadchurch, so I liked it this one too.
I think it was my second favorite episode.
What was your first favorite?
Episode 4. So the one before last week. I can't exactly remember everything that happened. I just remember that that one was my
Like the
favorite.
bomb? Okay.
Yeah.
What was episode 4? That was Oh, was that the Mark episode with? Either way.
Yeah. I thought last week was when Beth did that, like, threw down the gauntlet and was like, I know you slept with me.
Yeah.
I was like, dang.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
she did it at the worst possible
I
time. But we're not talking about last week. We're talking
Anyways,
about
yes.
this week. No, I just the acting in this episode from Nick Nolte was unbelievable.
Yeah.
You felt his pain. You felt like the anger from the town, and like everybody was spot on in this episode. It was well written, it was well acted. Kelly, without going into specifics, I'm curious because this is the episode that we had heard diverged from Broadchurch.
It didn't.
Okay, so
This-
maybe it's
not at all.
after episode 6 is
Yeah.
when it supposedly diverges.
But Filch plays Jack in the Broadchurch one. Filch
David
from Harry
Bradley.
Potter, yeah. And he's usually a bad guy, but you like feel so bad for him in that. And, like you see his range. Nick Nolte, I feel like we all love Nick Nolte, so we
Yeah.
all kind of
You
feel
think
that.
so? I feel like he's kind of gotten more of like a bad guy type of rep in the past.
But he's like a cool
15
bad
years.
guy. He's not like evil like Filch,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay.
I don't know.
I mean, if you watch The Strain, he's just a badass, like Nazi killing
Which one?
vampire hunter.
Nick Nolte?
No, David Bradley. So he's not all bad. He's not always bad. Anyway, but let's dive into our suspect list because I'm talking about the episode. Well, let's start with Jack.
Yeah.
Jack was pretty high up on a lot of people's suspect lists, especially after last week and the revelation that he was convicted of statutory rape a few years ago, and then he left whatever that life was behind. What did you guys still think going into this episode? Like,
I never really thought he was a suspect. I mean, I thought he was more of a red herring. And then
Ditto.
how they kind of introduced him, when they introduced that he had, statutory rape charges up against him and that he came to the family and was so honest about it and so distraught about it. That didn't seem to me like someone who had done something wrong. It seemed like someone who was like really concerned about, just not disappointing this family. So I never really suspected him.
I think at the end of last week's episode that he was high on my list because of the rape thing, and the case had happened 5 miles from where he lived.
He was your number one suspect a week ago.
He was. I'm like, does anybody remember that? But I felt really bad for him in this episode.
Well, once it comes out, it's one of those things like once people know the story, know like what actually happened, and that's why he's so furious because people are just blowing a charge out of proportion, like without any of the details.
Well, I wonder why it took him so long to reveal that. Why he didn't just tell the detectives that the first time that they were questioning him.
Because it's none of their business. That's what he
said.
It's painful, and it's something that he's managed to keep away from everyone in this town up until this point. And he doesn't want to discuss it. He doesn't want anybody to know. To tell Ellie about it is to risk the whole town finding out.
It's just like Mark, though. I don't know why any of them won't just be upfront and honest. Like, okay, you cheated on your wife. The police aren't going to tell your wife, but they'll let you go home early, you know?
Well, Ellie. He's telling his wife's best friend, in fairness. That. But you're right. When there's a murder, and in Mark's case, when it's your son's murder, you just come clean about everything.
And even though this was painful for Jack, it would have probably avoided all that. Or maybe not, because they would have been snooping anyways.
I feel like that's why he didn't want to say anything. It's because he didn't want it to come out. And, you know, seeing your entire life, and especially all the tragedy in your life, just thrown on a newspaper, and people make accusations about what your life is, calling your wife a child bride and talking about your dead son like it's nothing. That's heartbreaking.
People are profiting from his misery
at
this point, and that sucks. And he took it to the extreme. Like the night before, he had been just sitting there playing the piano, like trying to find some peace in this after like a mob came at him. And what happens, like, while he's trying to find some peace, somebody smashes his window and spray paints pedophile on his front doorstep.
It looked like Vince.
Yeah.
Was it? Were they trying to hide who it was? But it looked like Vince.
That's what he looked like to me.
I have to imagine it's Vince. He was so riled. I want to know why he was so riled up. Like, he doesn't... What we've seen about him, like, he seemed, like a guy with a short temper or anything. But...
I think it's Vince. Sorry.
That's where I want to take this.
Or at least he knows something.
Is that he is so strongly going after this guy with so little evidence. He doesn't know what he did. He just knows what he was like convicted of, and it wasn't even like rape per se. It was like statutory, which like has this backstory to it. Like we know that that's a possibility, and so without looking into it, he just jumps to a lot of conclusions and forms a lynch mob.
Yeah.
It seems very extreme. So let's talk about Vince.
He's high on my suspect list. So he's actually number 1 on my suspect list this week.
He's got a lot of anger issues.
Yeah, there's something up with him, and especially the interaction he had with Tommy earlier in the season.
And with Susan, that one scene.
Yeah.
Did we find out why the relationship with him and Susan?
No, we don't know what's going on with Susan / Ruth and Vince, but there's something very off about the two of them.
Yeah.
Vince is this hot-headed dude who we know has some kind of dealings with little kids. Yeah, keep Vince away from your children.
Yeah.
Don't worry about Jack. Keep Vince away. He's like pulling Tommy into a shed. Just gonna point that out.
But the only thing is, what would be Vince's motive? That's the one thing I can't figure out, unless it was an accident. Because he was trying to get promoted and get a raise from Mark, but that's not going to happen if
I think it has
he's
something
going
to do
through that.
Sorry, with money. Like, just that there was $500 found in Danny's room, and I don't know. It seems like he has some type of side gig going on where he might be using these kids.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of thinking.
Also, that previous episode where he was hiding a weapon and there was blood in the van.
Yeah, that was like the second or third episode.
Yeah, I'm thinking Vince was doing some kind of deal with Danny. Danny either didn't deliver the money, didn't deliver enough money, got a little heated. Then Vince just, without thinking, bam, Danny falls over dead before Vince even knows what he did. So not like an accident per se, but like a loss in the moment. And then
Susan was watching.
Yeah, I think
apparently.
Susan saw
Might have
it,
called her or
took
something.
the skateboard because she's trying to protect Vince.
Yeah.
Because she's like, oh, he left this behind. It's going to give them evidence to catch him. And
maybe she needs help too because she has a secret past. So it's kind of like you cover for me, I'll cover for you.
Maybe.
So
I think they are some type of relative or not. I don't think they're mother son.
well, they showed his mom last week.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it does seem like they're like relational or something. But
or that it could be
Familiar.
as simple as she happened upon the crime, like as he's like putting the body at the edge of the cliff, like he thinks she's stashing it, and then because she clearly has some issues with I want to say abandonment or with just like there's that nobody has any affection for her.
But it seems also just the fact that she was expecting him to go to that dinner and everything. You don't ask that of someone that you don't have some type of relationship or had a past relationship with.
They showed Vince's mom in a earlier.
Last week, she was waiting in the car. Remember when he went up to Mark's house to give him the food to cook after church, and then they were sitting in the church together when Pastor Paul was giving the sermon to the whole
Yeah,
town.
they like didn't focus on it, but they did
they-
like drop that his mom
Yeah.
is there. So
And they talk about how she has like some type of mental.
Did
or
you
something.
see her though?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We've seen her a
Yeah.
few times. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
'Cause
mom put the sponge in the sink.
I thought because I think in Broadchurch it's their son and mom.
No.
Well, I'm saying like
Oh, yeah. That might still be the case, but
Well, no, but
kind of
they've
introduced
clearly
the
changed
character.
if they're changing stuff that
Yeah.
this now it's starting to diverge. And so we don't. This is and the writers are starting to get a little bit more freedom to play, and that's the thing is like you're remaking a show, but you also don't want to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I kind of hope they do though because I think
Careful, pick your
the
words carefully.
No, I'm saying I think the killer will be still a good surprise for everybody.
Okay,
Because
but I guess for the Broadchurch fans, I hope that they are making it unclear enough, like
to keep them guessing.
to
Yeah.
keep everybody guessing,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you watch Broadchurch or not.
Yeah.
I feel this one wasn't unclear. This was like kind of a play-by-play of just like episode
Yeah.
6, and previous ones were pretty similar too. But I feel like as a Broadchurch fan, I don't mind rewatching it kind of the same, just because it's fun rewatching it with people who haven't seen Broadchurch, and you know what's gonna happen, but they don't.
Yeah.
You're like, aha, I see a hint there that I didn't see when I watched.
Yeah, but it's also there's also 2 extra episodes
Yeah.
in this show than there were in Broadchurch, so we know that they have to change something, a bunch of it, if nothing else.
I was,
But there's
But-
also no commercials in
Broadchurch.
Broadchurch. I don't
Oh,
see
so they
that.
run
interesting.
longer.
So it's yeah.
Well, either way, let's continuing with the Vince and the Susan discussion. I think she happens upon him covering up the scene, like planting the body there, like after his fit of rage, he plants the body, and she happens upon him, and basically is trying to blackmail him into being her friend, because she's smoking the cigarettes.
Did they
That
link those cigarette butts to somebody?
No,
Yeah.
they
Oh,
they
just
did.
know that
Okay.
they're very unique cigarettes and that somebody
High tar.
stood by the body smoking. So if Susan, I'm not willing to necessarily put the murder on her for the cigarettes being
Yeah.
there, but I think that she either witnessed it or was somehow involved in another way.
I think he came to her. The feeling I got was that in panic, because she's crazy, but she's a savvy woman. So I mean, she went up to Kathy and was like, "I know men who would rape you." So the
Yeah.
woman obviously knows how to be how to break
Unbalanced.
bad, basically. So if there were anyone that he would turn to, it'd probably be her, because she probably does know how to do stuff like cover up a murder and a crime scene and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and how to move a body and all that. So
Although Ellie's reaction when Kathy, the newspaper lady, is telling her about what Susan said, I loved it. She said, "What?"
I know.
Because
So
that's how
weird.
we felt after
Yeah.
you said, like, wait,
What?
what?
Like,
Can-
you said
Go
what?
back. I must have not heard that correctly.
It's the weirdest threat.
A very scary threat, but very bizarre.
Yeah.
But so, well, Susan is definitely sketchy. There's something up with her, and there's no way we're crossing her off the suspect list. If anything,
Yeah.
she's like number 1 or number 2.
I feel like with the cigarette butts, I'm just gonna guess that like they're probably hers, but she just found the body and was just like smoking while
3
looking
is
at
a
the
lot of
butt.
cigarettes, though, to be standing
High
there.
tar cigarettes.
Yeah, but she's
Yeah,
real
3.
creepy.
Yeah, she's
So
got a
3.
lot of time on her.
How long
hands.
does it take to smoke one cigarette? I don't know.
It depends on the
no
type
idea.
of cigarette.
So maybe
'Cause,
like
yeah.
she was sitting there for like 30 minutes.
It
40?
seems like she was. For me, I was like, I don't think she's the only person smoking a cigarette. I don't think it was just one person smoking 3 cigarettes. I think it was
Tommy,
2 to
Vince.
3
3 people
smoking
smoking a
a
cigarette.
Yes.
Interesting.
Maybe one could have been Danny because apparently he was doing other bad things like stealing from a convenience store.
But,
But-
his body was moved to that
Oh.
spot.
Yeah,
Oh,
Danny
yeah,
was already
okay.
dead when he arrived at that spot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's
Um,
right. I forgot.
So other stuff that's going on in this episode, because really our suspect list is growing pretty short. Like Mark's off my suspect list. Beth is like acting crazy in this episode, but obviously I don't necessarily consider her a suspect.
Yeah.
Jack is off.
Yeah.
But what about Sarah, Owen's mom? For some reason, this episode, I was like, I kind of suspect her. You know, it just something rang odd to me about her
Well,
in terms of the obsession with the money and the
Yeah.
fact that she was willing to to manipulate her sister for $1,000, you know, to give evidence.
Yeah,
to help
she-
a
And the
child
boat's
murder.
hers, pretty much.
Yeah, they're just sorry. There's
It's
a lot of
in
words.
it's in repo, I guess, is what they were saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the boat was repossessed, and then
The boat wasn't repossessed. He was going to sell it to the repo guy to get his fridge back. Because she went in and like had his stuff
got
sold.
it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, I missed that part. So he owned the boat. It was just sort of in storage,
Yeah, it was just being stored on the beach because he wasn't using it.
but somebody cut it with bolt cutters.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, who has access to bolt cutters? Maybe Vince with his tool shed.
But Susan was watching it. That's what I was like, that's
Maybe it was
interesting
the
that she's watching.
hiker.
The hiker. The hiker we'll get into closer to predictions because they sort of don't talk about him this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
But why that boat? Like, only certain people. Is it the reason that it was that boat, or do they just pick a random boat? Do you think? Like, is it somebody that knows that that particular boat is there? Just something to think about.
Yeah, it seemed like that's why also it kind of Sarah kind of was like in my head thinking about her possibly being linked to it.
Do you guys think that she actually knows something?
I think she does know something. I think if anything, if they picked that boat for a particular reason, maybe it was because Sarah wanted some money and she was like, well, yeah, you can have my boat. You can have the keys to the boat if you give me such and such amount. I mean, she is some type of addict.
Yeah, either
So-
gambling or drugs.
Yeah. So she probably does know something. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think she knows something vague. Like, I
Yeah.
think she knows that the boat was taken, but
Yeah.
I don't think she knows who did it or something. Like, something that's kind of like weak info.
Yeah.
I think she knows something. I think maybe not as vague. I think she knows something that's going to connect to something else. So it may be kind of vague, but it's still necessary information that they're eventually going to get out of her because it's going to connect to something else.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So other people on our suspect list, Pastor Paul, or Father Paul. I don't know what the correct
Priest,
thing is.
pastor,
the
father,
priest,
reverend.
the priest.
Yeah.
I think up until the next episode, I was thinking that he was the suspect. When in like this whole time, I'm like, he's the killer. I guess like organized religion is creepy for me. Like the way he goes about it and the way he wants people to come to his church.
And
Well,
he's really pushing the memorial thing.
Yeah.
He's very pushy about a lot of things. He's Jack Reinhold is a member of my church. That's why you should protect him, or that's at least why he's there. He wants to teach Sunday school, even though that's not the traditional way that Sunday school is taught. So we know that he has a thing, not a thing for little boys, that's not what I'm saying, but like he wants to be around children. And as we learned with Jack, that doesn't have to be something creepy.
Yeah.
But there's something, but what did Kelly, was it you that was describing our
He looks like creepy Zach Braff.
yeah. He is creepy.
Does.
Yeah.
And whether that's the casting or the direction or the writing, they're definitely playing him up to be a creepy person.
He looks like brothers with the psychic, though, kind of, doesn't he?
Kinda.
Yeah, they didn't show the psychic this episode.
Well, because Carver was like, get out of town or I'm going to arrest you.
Yeah.
He's coming back,
He probably
though.
will. It's just the Paul seems kind of like a control freak. And so everything has to be the way that he wants it to be, which is why I think he can kind of come off as pushy. Is because he's just trying to control anything that he can possibly control.
So what if Danny puts something that he wants in his control out of his control? What if Danny
That's a
pushes
possibility.
the wrong buttons of the priest?
I could see, I don't get the impression that he would kill Danny just because of the love that he has for Beth.
Not
but you never know.
intentionally.
But
But
that-
again, you never know when somebody can just snap over whatever.
Snapped.
That could be the reason
Gotcha.
why he killed. Because
Yeah.
of the love for Beth.
He could. I mean,
Yeah.
I personally don't think that would be the case, but I'm not, ruling him out. He is still creepy. Control freaks are creepy.
The insomnia, we know he was likely awake that night, but like he has like not a strong recollection of like whether he was up. I feel like the next day you instantly recall everything that happened to you that night before and remember it. That's like a major event.
Yeah.
It's like you recall every moment of that day. Big days like that. Like, I don't want to draw the comparison too strongly, but the one that stands out for me is like 9/11. Like I remember all of what I did that day because I was in New York. I grew up in New York. It was a very crazy day, being less than 20 miles from the city, and I remember. I was in high school. I remember every single moment of that day. You don't forget when like a murder happens in your small town, what your emotions were the night and the time of the murder.
At first, I thought, I think we were saying this, that that could have been Danny's father, Pastor Paul. And I saw some comments on our YouTube that some other fans that are watching the show thought that as well. But then in this episode where Beth was addressing to Mark that she was pregnant, the way that she was going off at him, that we got together when we were 16, I didn't really see Beth as like, cheating on Mark with Pastor Paul. So
Not yet,
just wanted
anyway.
to bring, not
That
yet.
was an awesome blowout that she did.
Yeah,
on Jenna.
so
I was like,
Beth,
get it.
Yeah, Beth
those
has
glasses.
an amazing emotional turn in this episode, and again, the acting just coming through very strongly. Like once we open on her and Mark finally having the conversation, like, are we going to talk about it? By it, you mean Gemma.
Yeah.
She drops the pregnancy thing in that conversation. I thought Mark's like deflections were
Weak.
BS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like maybe
it.
maybe you're, but no. Before that, when
But when he was saying, maybe you're not into me, or there's an
Yeah.
absence there.
That's
I'm
why
not what you wanted.
That's
why.
so much ego BS right there. Well, I ran away because I felt like you weren't into me.
You didn't want
anymore.
me.
What?
Yeah.
Talk to your wife, dude. Go up to your wife and talk to her, okay? Get
Yeah.
some balls, man.
I
What is
mean,
that?
yeah, that's why I'm they were young kids. Like the thing is, that is I don't want to say reason to cheat, but a legitimate like way to go through life. Like you marry very young at a shotgun wedding, and then you start to feel stuck at a certain point because it wasn't a decision that you made. It was life sort of made the decision for him.
Yeah,
And
but it was definitely on him. It
Oh,
had
yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
to do with
No,
her. And so
it-
he didn't own up to that.
blaming Beth is the biggest load of
Yeah. Come
Bull.
on. Let's be real about that.
But then she drops the pregnancy bomb, and it's just like, I don't. And he's like, you have to keep it. We have to keep it. First of all, why is that the first thought that you have?
Yeah.
I wonder, because it doesn't seem like she's big on that in the first place. Otherwise, it wouldn't have had Chloe, right?
Yeah. I mean, he probably just sees that she's under stress, and then she's obviously pissed off about the cheating thing. So he knows that her mind probably isn't there. So he probably just freaks out like, hey, this is my child. I'm affected by the decision too. You have to keep it. So
Yeah, but this is the after you've cheated, I think telling a woman this is what you have to do with your body is the wrong approach.
Yes.
Maybe wait a day. Wait till tomorrow. To bring that
let her
up.
process. Give her maybe like a week or two. Maybe.
Yeah.
That whole. Sometimes Mark just rubs me the wrong way. Just
all the
because,
time.
No, not all the time. Like that whole scene with him and Jack was really endeared me to Mark. But his interactions with his wife, sometimes I'm just like, hey, why? Why do you treat her like that? I don't really know why you guys are still together. So I'm not at all surprised that she's considering not keeping the kid. I mean, he doesn't seem to
He's not all
treat
there.
her. He's not there. He's not
Yeah.
present in their marriage anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where his character has to go at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, like, we saw his big drama. We had that. You're right. That moment with Jack was great when he pushes Vince away. He's like, "You back off," and then he turns to Jack, and is still he wants an answer because there's somewhat legitimate questions to be answered at that point, with no suspects, like no leads. Like, you have to take the littlest thing he can hold on to. He did find the phone. It's reasonable that he could have just found it. Anybody could have stashed it there. Even it could have just been there for 2 weeks. But when he finally gets the answer and he gets everyone away, we do have respect for him a little bit.
Yeah.
I do not respect Mark as a person right now. Still.
I also liked when he stuck up in an earlier episode against like the pastor, and he's like, "Why is this all about you and your mass?" Remember?
It's supposed to be
know.
about the family, about the help.
Yeah.
If the mass isn't going to help the family, don't have the mass.
I feel like he means well, but he doesn't really know how to do it, how to do the right actions.
Yeah.
He messed up, and he can't really emote properly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind him that much, but I
Yeah.
also like the actor that plays him.
Yeah. Me
Yeah,
too.
he's a good actor. There's definitely some interesting stuff to come. And before we get into more stuff, we're going to talk about creepy old Hugo. We're going to talk about Detectives Carver and Gemma. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about. But first, I want to talk to you guys about iTunes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this, our little discussions and dissections of these episodes as we try to figure out who it is. We suspect everyone, but I expect that you guys have your own suspects. And I want to know what you guys are thinking. What are your theories right now? And the best way that you can tell us and also help us out at the same time, go onto iTunes, hit us with a review, leave your theories in there as well in the review, and let us know what you're thinking, and we'll discuss it on the show. So go onto iTunes, give us a rating. Thank you so much for listening. It helps everyone else out here at AfterBuzz TV, helps us stay current and relevant, helps everyone else find it. Tell your friends, hit the like button on YouTube. It makes a big deal. It makes a difference. So thank you guys so much. And let's get into it. Let's talk real quick about creepy old Hugo.
What was that?
It's random.
Yeah.
It was so random, I feel like it has to be relevant.
Or they just could have put that in there to kind of fool you, like, what? This guy, he did
But
it.
this random minor character, like the crime scene investigator, is like hitting on Ellie, knows she's married, has probably in this town like met her husband before.
I mean, we all knew Mark Solano was married, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
But he
so-
pushed it too. It was weird because she shot him down and he said something like,
Happily
yeah,
married?
there's a lot of happily married couples, like wink, wink.
Yeah.
It was very weird.
It was creepy, but like it's definitely it has to come back. They're not just gonna like do that and then let it go.
I think they will let it go. I think it was more played for a comedic moment, just so you could get that moment between Ellie and Carver.
You think?
I kind of do, because sometimes it does get a little heavy, and
They need
David
something
Tennant is a great comedic actor as well, so sometimes I feel like they put stuff in just to kind of get you to enjoy him, like in a little bit of comedy.
And
Yeah.
it's fun to see Ellie kind of squirm. I feel like they
Yeah.
put her in
Yeah.
a lot of situations where she squirms. So
Yeah.
It is, but I feel like there's a lot more ways to mine comedy from like the detective situation than taking a character in a wildly weird direction. So I think it has to come back either in a small way as like just a minor D plot,
It might
or
come back.
or Hugo could end up being like this really weirdly creepy guy, like very heavy attention to detail, as Carver points out, but with a totally different meaning.
Yes.
I mean, maybe, like, you never know. Crime scene investigators have all the details. They know what's up.
is this the first episode where Hugo was introduced, or was he?
No, he's been
he's
around
been
since the
around for a
beginning.
while. Okay.
Like, but he's just been our, like, lab geek.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
let's not forget Dexter Morgan. I'm just saying, lab geeks. They're dangerous people.
Blood spatter analyst, okay?
Yeah.
Not a lab.
But so you're right. We did need some levity, and we got a little bit in this episode from
Yeah.
Detective Carver. I loved the moment with him and Gemma.
Yes.
It was just after the blow up in the bar. Gemma's in a weird spot, not quite knowing what to do because she just had like somebody storm in and like, which there was nobody else in that bar except like the pastor and her, except that she's saying that the hotel is now full.
I think it was just the timing, like the morning or whatever, that there
Yeah.
wasn't anyone in there. But I will say, for me, watching that scene, all I can think was, turn off the taps.
That's what
Turn
I
off
was
the taps
thinking,
right now.
too.
Yeah.
Do not waste good beer.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Sorry, maybe that's just me because I used to be a bartender, but I was like, what the hell?
I thought that I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
But I'm willing to grant them, like, I'm sure that there was
Yeah.
discussion about it. I'm willing to grant them that like, after that, like,
No.
craziness blow up, you're
I totally
not
get
even,
it.
like, thinking.
I totally get it for, the sake of cinema or whatever, but in my head, I'm like, the first thing she would
like
do
run
would be
over
like,
and
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then
turn
think
this
about
off,
it.
and then think about it.
And I love that after that moment was just like, I feel so good. Anger. But then when we get Gemma upstairs, she brings towels in, which, like, why couldn't she just hand it to him in the doorway?
yeah, she
Like,
came in and shut the door, and I was like, who does
Well,
that?
he shut
Well,
the door.
He
Oh,
offered
he
her to
shut the
come
door.
in,
Yeah,
which is weird.
Okay.
which is fine, but, like, what?
Just say no. Be like,
You
here's
know,
your towel.
That's
You got-
just also probably, I think, to link to the press being there. So if
She wanted to
Oh,
talk to
like
him
come
about
out,
it.
shut the door,
she'd
okay.
come in.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It does feel like it's reasonable for what Carver, like, leapt to in that moment.
There's a bedroom. Anytime there's a bedroom in a scene and there's two single people who have maybe a mild flirtation, I usually assume that, not that it's going to happen, but it will be brought up. So
Yeah.
the moment the door was closed and they were talking and the bed was like just off camera, I was like, okay.
But it was a great little, like, tit for tat that they were having where they're like just like silently flirting, and then Carver was just straight up. What was that? He's
Because
like,
he's so
"Do you-"
awkward.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if that was like him trying to get like what she was getting at, or if he was trying to like if that was
I feel
his
like he
attempt
was trying
make
to
a
jump
move.
to it, and he was down. But then if she rejected, then it was like kind of not a big deal. But I feel like he was trying to guess what she was trying to say, and he was like, "Yeah, do you want to do this?" And then,
I think he misread the situation.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
says that.
definitely.
He was like, oh, I'm sorry. I think I.
but I feel
misread
like he was
this."
open to it though.
Oh,
yeah.
totally.
Definitely,
Yeah.
My only question was whether or not he was like he thought she was trying to get to that point, and he was just like, "All right, let's just talk about it," or if he was like, there was like a little flirting, and he was just like, "Hey, let's get in bed."
I think that's more of the thing because the face he made right before he asked was kind of like, oh, is this okay? You can see it very quickly go, okay, I could do that. Would you
I
want
just-
to do that?
Would you like to relax in bed with me tonight? Such an awkward way to do that whole thing.
Honestly, though, he's still David Tennant. So in my brain, I was like,
Yes.
yes.
And then
Sorry, what? Like,
I'm willing to say that those two might hook up down the line because
They're totally going to hook up.
the only she's even like, it's not that I don't want to or that I wouldn't. It's just, but and then she's like, but what if you pass out on me?
yeah. I don't think they will because she is actually afraid that he will pass out. And that's fair.
I think they're just friends. Like they have a
Yeah.
nice friendly bond. I mean, I feel like she's his closest friend in the town aside from Ellie, considering she knows his big secret, and their conversations always seem kind of light and everything.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be any bow chicka wow wow between them.
Yeah, I don't think it
It's
will
not-
happen, but they have some kind of chemistry.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess if anyone on this show is going to hook up, I'm saying it's probably going to be, well, we already had Owen and Renee
Yeah.
hook up, so I take it back. I forgot about
Yeah.
them for a moment.
Can we talk about how I'm just over Renee?
Yes, let's get into Owen and Renee. Owen gets a conscience in this episode.
Yes.
But not until after.
Until
Destroys
he's
a
already
man.
done
Yeah.
a huge amount of damage. So yeah, but they're hooking up, and
It's messy.
what's going on there?
She's totally using him just to get closer to the town.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
And then she keeps bringing up the cash and the byline, and she reels him in on this episode, but I think he finally gets a taste of like what big journalism is about, because the article he wrote is just not the article that was published.
I think she rewrote it. I don't think the editor rewrote it. I think she after they sent it, she was like, I'm gonna go make some changes.
And she used his mom to like probe him to write the article. She said something about like, doesn't the cash or this for your mom or something. I was like, dang.
Yeah, she's, last week we had talked about it, and I said that I thought she didn't sleep with him, like, with that intention. Then it was only afterwards she saw the situation and was just like, oh, I can take advantage of this. Now I'm not so sure. Now she seems more scummy.
She knew about it all along. I feel like she's a journalist. First and foremost, she'll do anything, do anyone to get the story.
Yeah.
You know?
The only question is, who's next?
Oh no.
Yeah.
Either way, I think we can all agree that Renee, I don't like her. We all don't like her.
Yeah.
But Owen is going through, he refuses to help her anymore after they go to Chloe and Dean. And Dean is like, yeah, he touched me on the back like 5 times. What?
So horrible.
Talking about Jack, that's the worst. Like, this is a guy I don't know what is he trying to do at this point?
See, that makes me think that maybe he knows something or could be in on it too, because it seems like they're, Vince and Dean are trying to deflect the attention or push the attention towards
Someone else.
Yeah, so that they can just get the blame over with, and then the town can move on. Like, oh, we killed, that guy's gone. It was him. So maybe Dean.
Interesting.
Possibly. I don't know. It was weird though. He said he approached Chloe about it, and then Chloe immediately wanted to take the reins and say like, no, it wasn't just once. It was like multiple times.
Yeah, what was up with that? Chloe had no experience with this. Why was
Yeah.
she the one answering all the questions here?
That was fishy.
She's I'm getting suspicious of her.
I think she just wants to find the killer, and she's like throwing everything out. Like,
Yeah.
no, listen, he's done this, guys.
Just young and being
Yeah.
naive.
And maybe if we're, like, just not to throw Dean too far under the bus, what if he is just trying to reingratiate himself to Chloe by potentially helping catch Danny's killer? He's like, oh, if I give testimony, they'll catch him, and then Chloe will go out with me again because...
Dean knows something, though, because he spent a lot of time with Tommy. He knew things that, like, Danny, I'm sorry, that his parents didn't know. Remember, like, he picked him up on the motorcycle. So I feel like he still knows a little bit more.
He may. I still don't think that they're gonna make him.
Yeah, I
part of
don't
the
think
group
he's the
'cause
killer,
he's
but
the lone black guy.
yeah. It was the black guy.
They're not gonna do that. Hopefully not. But
Yeah. So, lastly, let's talk a little bit more about just the end of the episode. This like really tragic moment for Jack. he obviously was dealt like basically just a final blow to his heart in that when he saw that newspaper headline that not only were they attacking him, they attack his family, his dead son.
That was like the last straw for him,
Yeah.
I think. And
But I kind of felt, I don't know if I said this already, I felt it coming the whole episode. Like, pretty much when they decided to make it where Vince is kind of rallying against Jack in the car with Mark, I was like, oh, Jack's going to probably kill himself.
Oh, it was a total surprise to me.
It was a surprise. I just got that feeling like,
No,
this
I had
is
the
too
same
much.
feeling.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing. It was
Me
gonna
too.
he was gonna commit suicide at the end.
I thought there might be some violence against him. I thought he might like do that, leave town. Like Mark tried to like, he's like, you should get out of here. Like Mark was almost caring in that moment of like, yes, it's the wrong way to approach it. Like you don't turn tail and run from that situation. You turn and talk to those people and be like, this is why you guys are idiots. But I didn't think until that moment where he's walking onto the beach, I did not think that he was going to kill himself.
well, that was his home, you know, that
Yeah.
so he couldn't leave, and he's so old. He's not gonna start fresh again.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
been 20 years, and he's finally been cleared or whatever.
And then he talked about how much he liked spending time with the kids because, you know, it reminded him of his son. And, you know, why was it bad to, you know, want that type of, you know,
For a man to
affection?
have affection.
Yeah. And so just like you said, he had nowhere else to go. He obviously wasn't going to continue with wildlife because once the town painted that image of him in all those papers, like that was it. There was nothing really else to live for, I feel like. So
Yeah, I think when you have that much tragedy that you've left behind and you've built this life and you are alone, you know, there's not like there was anyone else that was really brought up in his life that like a sister or anything like that. I mean, his wife's gone, his
Yeah.
kid's dead, everyone in the town hates him.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
yeah, I
blame
felt
him.
it coming too.
The big question is going to be how the town reacts after this. So for that, let's get into predictions.
Yeah.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So how do you guys think the town is going to react once they learn? We saw Carver sort of find out, but and then him and Ellie walk up to the beach, but we don't get anything more than that. What do you guys think is coming in the reaction to Jack's suicide?
I think there's just gonna be a funeral, if that, and I don't think many people are gonna go.
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna react that much. They're gonna just continue on with the crime.
I mean, do you think some of the people like Vince are going to say, "Oh, crime solved. He clearly must have done it," or do you
No.
think, like, especially after the story about his wife and his son comes out, and Mark's probably more willing to let people know this information now that Jack's passed on?
I think they just ended it. Like that's the end of his storyline.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay,
I agree.
interesting.
I kind of got a similar feeling that that's just where it's going to end because they can't have a death, sadly, override the death of Danny. Just, you know, plot point wise, that they're not going to let that happen. So I think it's going to be one of those things where some people like Vince are going to say some mean things and some people like Paul are going to say some kind things and maybe rage against Carver and Ellie for not doing something about it earlier. And then they're going to move on to something else.
Yeah, I do think that we're going to see them investigate who wrote pedophile.
And
So
broke
maybe
into
go
his
into
place.
maybe looking into Vince, and maybe that leads to them finding out more about what happened with Danny, because I still believe that Vince is behind it. But next week in the preview, Tom vanishes. Little Tommy
Yeah.
disappears after we saw him talking in this episode to Susan/Ruth. She's like, "Oh, you should come walk my dog. Come to the beach in the trailer. I'll yeah, it'll be fun." Like she's like, "Please pay attention to me." Like she needs. It's sad that she needs that affection. It's not unsimilar to Jack and how he just wanted somebody to pay attention to him, to give him some form of love, even if it's just a little bit. But Tommy is on the loose.
The hiker comes back in the previews.
Yeah, the hiker's back. He's being super sketchy. What do you guys think? What are you predicting to see that we're going to see? Kelly, you don't get to participate.
I want to have a prediction though, but it's not going to be anything specific.
Okay. Go ahead,
okay.
real quick. Those of you who are worried, you can skip ahead 30 seconds.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to predict that it's going to turn out like Broadchurch because something in this episode was like a big, like watching it now is like, aha, I see what you did there. Was like a big red flag. Now watching it, I feel like they're going to go in that same route because it'll be a great surprise. And
Okay.
I feel like next week, Tommy's going to walk Susan's dog.
What are you guys thinking?
I always felt Tommy knew something to begin with. Like maybe he doesn't know exactly what happened, but he has some type of idea, and that's why he'll end up vanishing. Maybe they're aware that he has some type of information, and he gets taken.
Okay. So definitely take and not run away.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna run.
Or
I don't think he
maybe
would run away. I
Susan
don't
could
think
be hiding him.
They don't even tell you how long he disappears for, so it could just be for an afternoon or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's.
But it looks like much more than that. Looks like they have
Well,
a presence.
It has
I think
to be
it's
a
more-
day before you.
Yeah.
Well, in the wake of what's going on with Danny, I think the town is going to be much more reactionary to him disappearing, not going to school. Like it's not just a kid skipping out on school. Everyone knows like you have to be careful because there's a killer on the loose.
Right. I think Owen's mom, was her name Sarah? Ellie's
Yeah.
sister?
Yeah.
I think she is going to have some information next episode. I think we'll see her again and somehow we'll get something out of her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Any last thoughts on this episode, guys?
I liked it was really like Broadchurch, so I liked it.
I feel like we made progress in this episode.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in a sad way, one suspect is down, but we've made some progress in closing it out.
One suspect crossed off the list, definitely not Jack, but a lot more to go. Some crazy theories. Tell us what you guys are thinking. I want to know because I think I'm taking wild swings here, but I bet you guys have even wilder ones. So thank you guys so much for tuning us. Thank you to Marissa for engineering. And where can the people, let's start at the other end table with Adrian. Where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Miss Adrian Snow. That's MSADRIANSNOW.
And you guys can find me. I have a new Instagram name. It's Stay Classy Anna with 2 N's, and it's also the same on Twitter. Thanks.
And I'm Kelly. You could find me on Twitter and Instagram at HollyWeirdo.
And you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @ZachWilson. And also here at AfterBuzz, I got a bunch of shows: Grimm, Resurrection, Z Nation, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comes back next week. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Zach Wilson, and thanks for geeking out with us.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.